the amazing artist duo Operator that will bring a performance lecture, Human Unreadable, Generative Choreography. Now, before we start, I would like to give some background information on this wonderful duo. So, their collaborative practice develops critical and conceptual approaches to experience. It's interesting, and I don't know if some of you were at the Sunset Cocktail yesterday when they were actually themselves explaining their story, how on one hand you have a human-computer interaction technologist that brings in her practice, and on the other hand, a choreographer and performance artist. So they meld together their both universes to bring something very extraordinary by engineering medium-agnostic output, joining environments, technology, and, of course, the body. The exploration into privacy and extractive technologies began with their installation on view in 2019, and ever since, there have been a lot of performances and remarkable awards that they have actually acquired. The Lumen Prize twice, Generative Art Award in 2023, Savvy Award, the Starts Prize, a very recognized prize in Europe. And they have spoken at events and institutions, including Christie's Art and Tech Summit, Art Basel, of course, University of Cambridge, Francisco Carolina Museum, and Bloomberg Art and Technology, amongst many others. Originally, they're from Los Angeles and currently based in Madrid. And then I would like to also make a special note about this performance is they are pioneers in their creative uses of technology, being at the forefront around the conversation how technology is being leveraged to transform the economics of performing arts. Their work aims to increase the cultural and financial value of performance, and they create opportunities for artists who work in ephemeral mediums to develop sustainable practices. So now all that's left for me is to introduce Operator and leave the stage to them. Thank you very much.
Frau Boyce, before ruling, I'd like to clarify your position. You contend these photographs of your husband's performances cannot be displayed as artworks in the museum.
Yes. Joseph's performances were temporal events existing in specific moments. These photographs were merely documentation. They were never intended to replace the work itself.
But didn't your husband ever consider how his art would live on after the performances ended?
Joseph believed in social sculpture, art's ability to transform society. These photographs reduce his revolutionary actions into mere images. They completely flatten the experience.
But without these photographs, how would the future generations experience any aspect of these works, Widow Frau?
Through writings, teachings, from the objects that were left behind. Those are legitimate artifacts, not observer photographs.
Okay. Well, these photographs, they were taken with his knowledge, weren't they?
Yes, as documentation only, not as independent artworks meant to represent the work in a museum.
Well, I have to say that my ruling, while I sympathize with Frau Boy's desire to protect her husband's vision, I must overturn the previous decision. The museum may proceed, provided that they clearly identify this documentation rather than artworks themselves.
This completely misunderstands Joseph's work. These photographs create a false impression and commodify that which was never meant to be commodifiable.
I understand, but the law must balance artistic intent with public interest in the cultural preservation. Without these images, an important aspect of your husband's contributions would be completely lost.
Your Honor, these photographs are like pressing a butterfly between pages. You preserve something, but you kill what made it beautiful.
Okay, well, perhaps. But the court believes that Joseph Boy's work deserves to be remembered, even if imperfectly. The ruling stands. Jade, I'm not interested in creating these collectibles out of our performances, you know? The moment we make sellable objects, we compromise the work itself, you know what I mean?
That's cute, and I really respect your commitment to artistic purity, but people need to eat. The dancers in our last work worked for almost nothing.
Okay, well, that's capitalism's problem. Our job is to resist those market pressures, not cave into them.
Our job is to make art that matters, which requires resources. Without income, only those with wealth or existing institutional connections can even afford to make this work.
I know, but your solution is what exactly? Limited edition photographs or performance, I don't know, artifacts, relics in plexi boxes?
My solution is pragmatism, creating thoughtful documentation, writing books about our process, finding ways to translate ephemeral work into forms that can actually circulate.
I don't know, I think you're diluting performance's most powerful aspect, you know, experience, and its resistance to being captured and owned is, you know, really, well, you know.
No, I'm talking about artists being able to pay rent, about having enough stability to take real risks instead of playing it safe.
Okay. I mean, once you start thinking about what the photographs, well, you know, makes a compelling project, the integrity of that live moment is like completely corrupted, don't you think?
Well, what about models that preserve the primacy of the live experience while also creating supplementary materials? These don't replace performance, and you don't have to think about it like that. They can actually just extend its reach. They can be something else.
I don't know. I worry that we'll just end up creating work that is designed, I don't know, you know, to be documented and sold rather than experienced.
That's valid, but what if stable funding allowed you to take bigger risks, to fail spectacularly, to develop truly experimental work without having to worry about the immediate results? The most radical act might not be refusing the market entirely, but actually engaging with it to fund the truly unmarketable aspects of our practice.
I hear what you're saying, but maybe there's a middle path that acknowledges the real conditions the artists work within.
Not selling out, but finding new sustainable models or making new sustainable models. The freedom to fail is the only real artistic freedom, but that requires financial stability.
Well, I suppose I'd rather see thoughtful documentation than watch another generation of artists burn out and disappear. You're right.
Which is that the whole issue about performance-related work is about what does the artist intend? I say, does the artist intend it to be ephemeral, here today, gone tomorrow? Is some artists make works as videos, as films, and therefore, and that's the intention, is that it should be the case. So it should be, from a collector's point of view, from our point of view, trying to help the artist and or the collector or the gallery or whatever. The starting point is always, what does the artist intend?
Hello, everyone. I'm Dejha.
And I'm Ania.
We're operator. Okay, so we had a few discussions of different positions of, you know, how to experience performance. What does, you know, the artist intend? Can a performance be, you know, can it be justified by simply a photograph or notation, for example? And so Henry, our friend Henry, what does the artist intend? What do you think, Ania?
I think every artist has a very different intention. And there is also, I think, funny because outside of performing artists themselves, they might think that all artists have one position when it comes to this question, but actually this is completely on a spectrum, which we made this very cute spectrum, which is completely anti-performance, which is no documentation should ever exist of performance. Reluctant, which is, I hate that you're doing this, but okay. Functional, which is, this is strictly to archive performance and make sure it lives on in history, but it's not anything related to a creative act. Or extension of the work, which a lot of performing artists take great care in how they document their work, and they see it as an extension of the work, not a replacement, but supplementary. And then there's artists like Ana Mendieta, for example, where the primary work is a performance that had no live witnessed component, but actually exists specifically for the camera, for an image, or for a film. So there's a huge variety in perspectives on how performing artists approach the question of documentation.
And to extend on the ephemerality, not just on preserving performance, but also how that, I would say even engages with the market or the lack thereof. History of performance art and performance and dance, there hasn't really been a way to collect it other than photo documentation, video documentation, rights to reenact that performance, for example. Notation is another example. But to actually own it as an art object has really not been sorted out. And this has had an impact, I think, also on the economics of performing arts being left out entirely from some of the pleasures visual art can experience.
So now that we've said all of that, we are Operator. We're an artist duo established in 2016. My background is in choreography and performance art. So prior to meeting Dejha, I was working with the body, making films, site-specific performance work, all very analog.
And my background is as a human-computer technologist and multimedia artist. Prior to working with Ania, I was focused on interactive installations, generally quite large scale. But there's something that is consistent between my practice prior to Operator and Ania's practice prior to Operator, which is the human body is central. While I think about the human body and how the human's experience of a work that is mediated by technology, Ania has a different sense of how you interact and implement it into the works.
Yeah, the body as a medium, the body as a site, the body as the paint, and also the canvas and the primary material of life, basically.
So together, and we've been working almost 10 years now, Operator has existed, and there are 3 pillars to our practice. So immersive environments, right? Technology, and performance art. And we often say that we have no allegiance to any one medium. In the roots of John Dewey's art as experience, and it kind of extends on this aspect of ephemerality in order to really fall into an immersive headspace and work with an audience also as a participant. And our other allegiance, because of the use of technology, we're always very careful not to lean on it too much. So it's really important that we're allegiant to the concept and hero the concept. Other than our cat.
It's our only other allegiance.
To our cat, Claude. And now there's an AI called Claude, and there's an AI called Operator. So
we're assuming the next big AI product is going to be called Dejha or Ania. We're sure of it. So in 2019, looking around at kind of the perception of digital art, we realized that there was a lot of judgment, misunderstandings around artists working with technology. And some of them were kind of well-founded. This is the moment where you had experiential digital art museums that had no artist mentioned, and kind of selfie museums and digital art becoming synonymous. So we created the Operator rules for art and technology just to kind of help ourselves avoid the kind of tricks and gimmicks that you can fall into when you're working with new, novel technologies or working with scale, as we often were.
And we put the art and technology in quotes because we actually really dislike this way of describing it, art and technology, because by separating, technology and extracting it out of art, then it's to put the emphasis where it should not be, right? We don't call it art and paint, art in clay, right? So why should we do art and technology? So digital art, how is it going? How's it going? Digital art?
Yeah, I think this is true.
What can you describe this?
I think what gets exported from the digital art community to the mainstream would make you think, if you're walking down the street and you talk to a random person, that big, spectacular digital art is the extent of it, is what it can offer. And I think those of us who are deeply embedded in that world know that that's definitely not the case. It's not the only way it can manifest.
Yeah. So I think often we see the headlines of, digital art has such a rich history, right? But it often in the headlines of, big NFT sales or immersive, museums.
Immersive dead artists.
Immersive dead artists. I like this one, immersive Van Gogh, immersive Frida Kahlo, immersive dead artists. But digital art has a lot more to give, and there is a group of artists, curators, and supporters really working for that. But these are the things that we really try to avoid, because we see that this extracts and takes away from the value of digital art. So the sale price, the headlines that you normally hear are the most. Are you entertained? 100%. Is it really art? They can't tell. Chance of offense? Absolutely zero. We can't piss off our sponsors. How many people attended? Everyone, and Timothy Chalamet, and also
Kylie Jenner, because they're together, so then you get both.
Right. Are we adopting useless technology? 100%, because probably the useless technology company provided the money and the funds for that work. Spectacle, 100%. So I think these are the trends that are often headlined, and so it's.
And I think this contributes to the kind of negative and limited perception of digital art to people outside of the digital art scene. So Marcel Duchamp didn't say that, but we think it's funny to imagine him saying that. So that's why we put this slide in here.
BSA. Okay. So I think often we see the tech world eye-rolling the art world, and we also see the art world eye-rolling the tech world for gimmicky uses of tech in art and art in tech, right? Both of these parties. And I think they both end up being in a position where they're kind of let down, and they just have a feeling of,
is that all there is? Is that all there is? If that's all there is, my friends, then let's keep dancing.
So everyone kind of feels like this, I think. And so in order to avoid this feeling of, is that all there is, we created our rules, which we hold ourselves to. And we'll start the first one, is no tech demos. So there is a place for tech demos, and that is technology conferences, not art making. Next, visible technology does not equal high tech. So a lot of people, especially if you're thinking about Industry 4.0 and the era of ubiquitous computing, technology gets smaller and less visible as it advances. But it's odd because people think that things that are the biggest and with visible technologies and lasers are the most high tech, and that's actually not how it works. Also, we do work with scale, but we don't rely on scale. Next, when the technology is no longer novel, will the work still hold up? So these works by Nam June Paik are not powerful because they're using the latest model of television. They're powerful because they have a message, and the technology is outdated, and the work still holds. And of course, we need to shout out the choreographers. So Yvonne Rainer, no to spectacle.
So these are the rules that we use when we are creating art that happens to use technology. And it's really important to us not just to use the technology in a technical way, but also use it conceptually. So as we begin to talk about our works in this presentation, you will see that we really feel that tech doesn't age well, but concepts do, right? So we're going to talk a lot about generative choreography and all the techie things that we did. And all the oppressive, shiny fireworks of the technology, but this isn't the point, and it's not enough to be art.
I like to think of the concept as like an anti-aging serum for an artwork. It's the only anti-aging serum we use. I'm pro-aging. So since 2016, these are the kind of works we've been making, as Dejha mentioned earlier, bringing together the body, immersive environments, and advanced technology. So ranging from websites to performance installations, browser experiences, music videos, all kinds, anything, films, anything you can imagine. But we kept getting met with this question. And
well, the medium itself is quite expensive, and so everyone's like, I love that. It's very Instagrammable, great for social media, great for engagement, and everyone loves it and wants it, but do you really have something to sell, you know? And so this conversation has happened many times, and the truth is we had nothing to sell at all. Mm-hmm. And we kind of refused to sell
and we
things.
refuse. I guess we like challenges, as you can see over there.
Self-sabotage.
We do have a friend who was like, you guys are the most like self-sabotaging art practice I've ever seen, which I thought was a compliment. But anyway, we're going to do a little bit of time travel to Hong Kong in 2019. So we were here. We were invited to speak at the Christie's Art and Tech Summit. We were invited to speak on a panel about immersive installations, and this was super exciting. So we came here, and we spoke, and then we had this moment, like a reckoning moment, where we were like, something isn't working, because we were flown to Hong Kong, we get picked up in a really nice car, we're staying in a very fancy hotel, and then we get to the room, and we literally couldn't even afford a side on the menu for room service. Like, we could not order fries.
No luxury fries.
No luxury fries. And we were like, something is not working. There's a disconnect between the context, the acknowledgement, the recognition, being invited, being heard, having awards, being in museums, and literally not having enough to order a side from the menu at a restaurant. So go back, the picture's great.
Okay.
So this, I think, was your course number like 7 at the breakfast, because we would go to the breakfast buffet in the morning, which was included, and eat for the entire day, because we couldn't afford anything in the hotel.
I mean, we also did some other things, but a lot of eating too.
Primarily eating, because the food is very good in Hong Kong. Mm-hmm. But anyway, we realized that despite everything that we had made, our practices, me, performance, and the body, ephemeral in its own way, Dejha, experience, installation, it was kind of like 1 + 1 = 0. Like, we were working in these mediums that combined just made us even more worthless. Very interesting tensions. So people would ask at that point, because we were actually doing kind of like corporate jobs, experiential design and marketing. I was teaching dance. So we were kind of had a very separate world for financial reality in order to fund. Yes. Like, Dejha did a huge project for Google, and we used her whole salary in order to pay for our museum commission about surveillance capitalism. So these were the kind of things we were doing.
It was a painful 30 days in San Francisco.
But it paid for the gold floor.
This is why Alex Esterich says that we're self-sabotaging.
Yeah, I know.
Because this is being recorded. But anyway, when we were in 2019, we were, I think, starting to understand blockchain, and a lot of folks around us realized that we were having this struggle. And the question came up many times, well, can you use NFTs as a distribution system, for example? And can you mint something, maybe just like from your archive? And I think, the real community in blockchain, they think a lot about blockchain as a medium, which we'll get to in a little bit. But for us, it wasn't enough to just mint something from our archive. We really wanted to think of the market as a site to create for, right? So if we're going to sell, we're going to intend to sell, because we create site-specific works. And even in our museum exhibition, it was called On View in 2019?
2019.
The 19th century.
In 1904.
In 1904, when I was 100. And so this is an artwork that is site-specific. It uses the mentality of the person going to a museum in order for them to be in the right headspace and the right mindset for experiencing that artwork. That artwork doesn't make very much sense outside of museum. So even we can think of a mindset, right? We can think of a culture as a site to create for. And so this was really important to us, but it was also important to us to use blockchain as a medium, right? Not just to use it as a distribution system, which is that works for our practice to think of it as a medium. I think it's also incredible for artists to be able to use it as a distribution system as well. But for us, we wanted to use, again, the technology in a conceptual way.
So we started working around the subject of privacy in 2019, but it was primarily privacy in a Web 2 context. So we started thinking about, we're going to be working with blockchain. We want to keep on this subject of privacy because it keeps on giving. But if we're going to be using blockchain technology, it doesn't really make sense to think about Web 2 privacy issues using a Web 3 technology. So we started a collection called the Privacy Collection, which is actually looking at how privacy functions specifically in a Web 3 context.
So in Web 3, there's a thing about being known for being unknown and hiding within transparent systems, and this tension between privacy and transparency and inherent in blockchain technology, and so we developed a collection called the Privacy Collection, which is 5 lots so far, and we started this in early 2020.
So our last piece from this collection is called Human Unreadable, which is the subject of our talk today. And it was site-specific to on-chain, long-form generative art. And a little bit about the history of generative art, in case those of you are not familiar.
So early generative art in the 60s, for example, was algorithms, computers making art, right? Making kind of, you could call them digital paintings, for example. And there was an aspect about that in which the computer would output an artwork based on your algorithm, but then you have an element of curation, right? It's not that these pieces are being output and you have no way of selecting which ones that you preferred. But if we fast forward to now, there is something called on-chain long-form generative art, where it does the same thing, where it's creating digital paintings out of the code that the artist developed, but it's all on-chain completely, on the Ethereum blockchain, for example. And so when the collector goes to mint or purchase a artwork, a digital painting, for example, you could call it a generative artwork, they don't know, and the artist doesn't know what the code will output, but they know it will generally output something that fits within the stylistic, nature of that collection. But the key thing here is that in that moment, it is minted, and it can be never removed from the blockchain, right? So you're kind of stuck with whatever. It's nerve-wracking, actually, I have to be honest. And I was going to ask the house if we can switch to the other laptop now, if that's possible. And we'll keep going. Can you talk about the double challenge?
The double challenge. Yes. Which set of double challenges? Kidding.
Well,
okay.
The visuals and the...
So on this platform called Art Blocks, where these generative art collections are made, typically the collector is minting an image made of code. And we looked at that and we thought, okay, if this algorithm is producing an image, what if we use this algorithm on the platform to create a dance? So to create a movement sequence out of an algorithm. And this, I think I need clicker. Right, yes. So the idea of introducing chance into choreographic processes did not start here. It actually has an analog history with Merce Cunningham, who did chance dance, where he would roll dice, and if you roll a 6, you do a jump. If you roll a 2, you do a turn. So we saw that dance already was experimenting with chance and choreography for a long time.
Do you see in the back of the house, do you see...
And the experiments in art and technology.
Okay,
is this...
I'm going to have to... If we could change the clicker to this computer, that would be amazing. Sorry for the... No, not possible? Okay, I'll do it by hand. So let's go. So where do you want to go?
I want to go to EAT.
Okay, you're going to pretend to click? Yeah, okay, go. All right. EAT.
EAT. So also thinking about using this platform in order to generate dance sequences, there were a few histories kind of colliding that we felt were, that this work, Human Unreadable, that we wanted to do, and this kind of, as you'll see, was an experiment, the historical lineages that we saw it carrying on. So first, as I mentioned, Cunningham, chance, dance, very central. Then the experiments in art and technology movement, which was 1960s, Bell Labs engineers and contemporary artists, choreographers like Yvonne Rainer and Simone Forti were central to the very beginning of the digital art movement. And so you always had choreographers and engineers experimenting together. And then, of course, you have the history of computational choreography with folks like Analivia Cordiero and Jean Beeman. And one of the earliest generative art or digital art exhibitions was called Cybernetic Serendipity, and it was at the ICA London, I think in 1967. And Random Dances by Jean Beeman was actually present in that exhibition. So the very earliest digital art exhibitions already had dance there. But at some point, dance and digital art somehow drifted really far apart. I don't know why, but we found that it was currently very disembodied. Everyone felt like digital art was taking you away from the body, was merely screen-based. We wanted to reestablish that connection through history by creating embodied generative art. So these were all kind of like the research and the pillars that fed into us creating Human Unreadable, and this is kind of the context in which we embarked on this experiment of creating generative choreography on blockchain and also making choreography collectible through that act. Does this work, or is this performative?
That's performative. You can keep doing it. I'll follow along.
I mean, it's like an illusion of control that...
Okay, then give me the clip.
Yeah. I want to control or I don't.
So Human Unreadable.
Human Unreadable is a collection of 400 artworks created through the platform called Art Blocks, in which the collectors, so in a way, the audience, we were also thinking about how can the token become more of an interface for someone who used to be an audience participant in our work to become a collector. So we reframed it from collector to audience participant. And the second that we started thinking about the token as an interface, then working with blockchain felt much better because we felt like we're just inserting a new layer into the experiences that we normally curate for people in person, but it's something that can unfold over time. And so the concept of Human Unreadable is the slow recovery of the human. Again, returning to this kind of theme and this issue we are seeing of everyone getting pulled away from the body. And so it unfolds in 3 acts. One is the reveal on Art Blocks, where collectors minted an artwork, and you see kind of like the presence of a human, but you don't see the human movement there. You have an image with movement lying behind it, but the human is still hidden. And then Act 2, the human was not visible. Act 2 is when collectors were able to, on our website, uncover the choreography that created their artwork. So what happened when they collected a piece was, as I mentioned, a dance sequence was generated. So each image is actually the result of a dance. So this was made through an underlying dance. So then the motion data of that underlying dance is what drove all the parameters that created this image. So you're kind of looking at movement hiding inside of a still image. And in Act 2, the collectors were able to reveal a choreographic score that kind of showed them, so this is the piece I minted, and then I'm able to reveal the dance there that made that image. So in this way, you see the slow recovery of the human, completely abstracted, then becoming a little bit more visible through the score, and then Act 3 is going to be in 2026, is going to be a live performance where we actually create an original evening length work using the sequences from the first 100 pieces and using them as kind of the raw material to make an evening length work. And in that way, we have audiences that are experiencing generative art, and specifically on-chain generative art, through the body rather than through a screen. So when people come to see that performance, the body is becoming the interface to experience generative art. So again, we're linking the body to body and kind of eliminating all technological mediation, just humans witnessing each other.
Okay, so on the left here, we have a diagram, and this diagram represents everything we had to do to create these images, and also to create the method in which the choreography could, 1, be collectible, 2, be fully on-chain through an algorithm and a motion data set that we uploaded to the Ethereum blockchain. And then we had to connect that to create these digital paintings, and then the secondary token that Ania just described, right, that dance score. So we had this idea that we were going to do this, but we didn't realize what we were getting ourselves into. I mean, like, kind of, we knew it wasn't going to be easy, but we're going to bring you through what is the process and journey to create this piece, which, to be honest, though we had in mind what we wanted to do, we're learning along the way. And so there was a lot of challenges and struggles and moments where we realized we don't think this is going to work, but we were in a position where we really needed it to work. So how I sleep at night knowing that being delusional is a form of manifestation.
I was so real in this project.
That was us, because as I just said, it took 9 months in the making just to create Act 1. So Act 1 are the visual outputs here, right? And to get to that point, which was only a quarter of the way, because there's 3 acts. I don't know if we'll ever have 3 acts in an artwork again, because start to finish, this artwork will be 4 years. So we really committed to that one. And it's interesting, so the engineer, Isaac Patka, who was the lead engineer for Human Unreadable, he's one of our collaborators, and he said something interesting, because he's a blockchain security engineer, and he says, you know, what I realized working on Human Unreadable with you is that, you know, in engineering, when everything works, the job is done, right? But in art, it seems that when everything works, the job is just beginning, right? So again, this notion of not leaning in to a tech demo, but rather leaning in to the artwork. Could we turn the house lights on all the way? Because we have performers coming out now.
We do.
Yeah.
Cue the dancers.
Cue the dancers. Perfect. So we're going to
forgot to mention, but it's quite important, that the collectors of these images, they don't just own the image, but they actually own the motion data of the underlying movement sequence. So I think a lot of people just thought they were collecting a nice image, and they ended up accidentally collecting choreography, which I love, was very happy about that. So I just wanted to clarify that they actually own the motion data of the underlying movement sequence. So they own both the image as well as a unique dance. And this is the first time that choreography has been made collectible in that way.
Okay, so we're going to bring you through the process. Can everyone see the blackboard? I will very carefully. Anna's looking at me like, gonna have a heart attack maybe, because I promise the rug will be safe.
So
right.
Joining us on stage, we have Noel Tang, Sharon Wong, and King Choi. So thank you for...
Okay, so the first part of the process, we're gonna have the performers enact this entire thing, because it's, you know, more engaging that way than a slide presentation. So, Ania, can you tell us about this first part right here, the conceptual movement, all the way to, let's just say, the mocap?
Yes. So thinking about this library, because each of these artworks, as I mentioned, is a unique movement sequence. So what are those sequences made of? So that required us first to create a movement library. And so there's a library of 31 movements. And what we decided to do was first think like, what are these movements? What is the point? What is the conceptual framework for the movements that are inside of this library? And what we felt was that in the long form on-chain generative art medium, that it was really leaning into kind of like modernist design, very like clean, geometric. And we wanted to bring some human messiness and maybe some of the aspects that are left out of modernist design and these like clean, kind of safer projects, and bring human chaos, messiness, emotions. So that was kind of the conceptual framework. So maybe we can all, for example, demo move for this one. So this one is movement number 4 and was kind of, to me, something that embodied shame and vulnerability, which doesn't feel like it had much of a place in generative art. And then maybe, let's do...
What's the one? This one. And then it ends like this.
Number 3.
You know which one? 2.
2.
Yeah. They're so good. They're so good. But they're better at moving than I am.
They're better.
Move number 2.
Number 2.
Okay. And you can see here on the right where there's all these avatars.
Oh, there, I can refer to there, yeah.
That is the motion data that once Ania was done creating these individual moves, what she did is she worked with dancers to test those moves in random sequences. And that allowed for her to understand that when the algorithm puts it in random sequences, it's not just art made by the computer, it's actually real art.
Oh,
and
right.
It's something that, we found that had the integrity as if we designed it ourselves.
I had to iterate a lot because the original movement library, when I put certain moves together, they didn't work. And they looked like, okay, here's a move, and then here's another move. And it was like, in the end, this needs to look like dance. It needs to not look like a bunch of moves stuck together. And someone's like, a computer made this. And like, no one cares. So, so then I had to revise in order to make the sequences more balanced. You know what would be a fun combination? Number 9, the run, followed by the nap.
Oh yeah. Watch
Okay,
out,
we're gonna do
everyone.
a combination of number 9 and number 15. Go. So this movement, number 9, which is not a dancer run, but more like a football player, like run, sprint, and hit the wall. I love this move so much. And then followed by number 15, which you can come to the stage for number 15, which is actually my favorite movement in the library, and I'm pretty sure every dancer's favorite movement in the library, which is called the 15-second sleep, because I feel that dancers need rest. Actually, so this is movement number 15, the 15-second sleep. And so, thank you, that was wonderful. I hope you enjoyed the rest. But so this is the kind of, this is giving you a little bit of the combinations of like how, and then those movements put together, number 15 followed by the rest kind of shows, then you start to create narrative. So like they ran and they hit the walls and then they were exhausted so they fell asleep. So thinking about how you can create moments, and then maybe you felt shameful because you weren't supposed to fall asleep, you were supposed to be productive, and then you have stories that are kind of emerging by how the algorithm chooses to put the movements together. Do you personally have any favorites in the library? Or any that you're like, this is me?
I like this one, the one that we just did.
2? Oh, that one. This is the fun one, too. This one I call Panther Crawl. It is a very enjoyable one. What about you, Sharon? Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
okay, cool.
Ania, can you do that one?
Right now in a skirt?
That one. Yeah, why not?
Not
Oh, no, you
really.
can't do it.
I'm wearing a corset and a pencil skirt, but not primed for movement.
So once Ania was
you can
happy
stretch.
with the final movement and the final movement design, what we did is we put her in a motion capture suit.
I don't recommend it.
You were very good at it. We put her in a motion capture suit, and we recorded all the data. So for those of you who aren't, familiar with motion capture, the value of doing that is that you can record human movement, human motion, and then you can take that and put it on, for example, a game avatar, Hollywood avatar, and anything that can be rigged to the human body. And you can make them do that dance. So very simply, you can see the avatars, the dotted avatars on to my right, are doing all of the moves. There's 31 moves in the Human Unreadable library and one improv move. So what you're watching there is the high resolution data, which is called an FBX. When we went to upload this and we did the calculations to upload it on the Ethereum blockchain, which we needed to do in order to make this a real scarce digital asset so that folks could actually, tangibly, in a way, own the choreography, it cost $200,000. $200,000 that we did not have. So we had to embark on how do we take this motion data, take these moves, how do we downsample it, but still preserve the essence of the moves, not lose the human. You can see here 3 seconds of movement in a spreadsheet. Looks like this. This is motion data. It's 1,000 lines down, 1,000 lines to the right. Can you guys do this one? The one on the screen?
Oh yeah, stage.
Okay.
This is this one?
Yeah. So,
Oh yeah.
you go ahead.
This one.
Yeah.
And you can stay in the front. Yeah,
Like-
perfect.
4 times in a row. They're so good. Fun.
So fun.
So fun. Okay. That movement, this is the motion data for that movement. And you can see how much data that is. So we had to embark on a process in order to downsample this.
Which amazed me, I have to say, doing this project made me more impressed with the human body as technology than blockchain, because what the body can express so simply, even this movement, like the body can express that. You received that information. As a conveyor of information, how sophisticated is the body? Look what it takes. That spreadsheet, when you look at it, that's what it takes to express that same very simple moment of time and interaction in data. So the human body is magnificent.
Back to $200,000
That we don't
have. Okay, so, and there's all this data, as Ania's describing. So we created something, an application, within a program called Touch Designer. It's a very powerful tool. Anyone grab me for any of this geeky technical talk after, but I'll spare you all the details while we're here on stage. So what we did is we created a series of custom tools in order to create a more feasible, economic scenario for our project, a budget-friendly project. And so we put ourselves onto bone budgets, where we asked Ania to remove bones from the body, because in this avatar there was 188 bones. And we told her, Isaac and I did some calculations, and we realized that we can't use 188 bones. We were like, Ania, we can only use 77 bones of the human body. So choose your favorite 77, as well as we can only use, 14 frames out of 1 second.
I literally became a dancer to avoid spreadsheets. And then I ended up there. But anyways, as you can see, this is an example of, this is movement number 20 in the library. And we don't need to upload all of these bones to the blockchain for this movement to express itself, right? Because it's not moving, so that movement is not helpful in preserving the essence of the move. So we went through this long process to basically downsample the human body while still preserving the essence of the movement. Then, maybe we can do number 1, this one. Because in this one, I also got to a point where I was like, okay, some movement just because of anatomy can be implied. You could just cite or repeat number 1. Some movement can be implied, because if my knee is like this in that first moment, and my ankle bone is down there, then I don't need to say where my shin bone is, because the angle of my leg, so then I have implied movement. If my knee is here and my hip is there, there's only one place that my thigh could be. So then I had all of these new tricks to figure out how to preserve the essence of the movement, eliminate bones that I didn't need in order to show the move, and also figure out these implied movements that just helped because of anatomy.
The next slide. Oh, sorry, I didn't realize I
Me?
shouldn't shout.
That's fine.
Yeah.
That?
No. That one. 5 months later.
Okay. Now you can do any of your favorite moves or stretch. Oh, you heard me. Okay, whatever. This is meta theater vibes.
Okay. So that top line took us about 5 months to create, and the whole team was like, guys, aren't we making visual art? There's no visuals. What is this art going to look like? And we're like, don't worry. Moving on to that now. The important thing is when you look at these images to the right, these are 2 pieces within the collection of 400. They're 100% made with code, right? When you look at them, people always think like, oh, is this collage? Or are you using, photography to generate these pieces? And the answer is no. Everything is made out of code. I think, Ania, how do you feel about now demoing? We'll do a tech demo.
We're doing a tech demo, but it's actually a tech demo. We're not saying that the tech demo is art. We're actually doing a technical demonstration. So we're not breaking our own rule of no tech demos here, because we're calling it a tech demo.
Let me just give a little context right here. Okay, so
you'll need your pen and paper.
You have it? Pen and paper? Okay. This line here speaks about our choreographic algorithm. This is kind of the chance dance. This is like taking dice and rolling them, and then it generating a sequence out of those 31 moves that you see over there. So if you rolled dice and it was like move number 2, okay, roll them again, another move number 2, roll it again, move number 12, and we even added, so a unique sequence would be created, right, from our algorithm, and it would not only give us the sequence of the moves, but it would also do other things. It would tell us if the stage facing is north, south, east, or west. So it's part of creating a score. Mm-hmm. So you could create direction when you set it on a stage. And there's something else that it gave, which is something called an emotional climate.
Mm-hmm. Which maybe while they're learning the sequences, we can review emotional climate.
Later.
Yeah.
I agree. Good call. So when the algorithm creates a unique output, that unique dance, so there's 400 artworks in the collection, that means there's 400 dances in the collection. And what happened is that that dance sequence was unique and mapped to what is something called P5JS. So it determined how to paint on the canvas the output. So Ania said before that the dance creates the visual. So I think we should do this live.
We are doing this live.
We're going to run the algorithm right now. It's going to both create a visual and it's going to create a dance. And the performers are going to do the dance that we're generating live. Sound good? Mm-hmm. Okay. This code base we're running locally. So as advertised, this isn't just a screen recording. I think we have some developers in the house who could just verify. Look, I'm running this. Okay, here we go. Local host. Ready? You believe me?
I believe you.
Yeah, okay. So here on the right, we have what we've done is we are inspecting the piece. This is the image, right? We go to inspect and we go to the console, and in this developer tool, we see the corresponding sequence. So these numbers are those avatars on the right, and then we see the image that they created. So again, the algorithm first creates the dance, and that dance creates the visual.
We're gonna cap it.
So, are you guys ready?
Yeah, I just want to say one quick thing.
Okay.
So
it's your presentation.
The motion data, yeah, I just wanted to squeeze because I'm also aware of time. Mm-hmm. The motion data, mostly the way that the underlying motion data created the image is not very one-to-one. It's not like if you see this pose, then that pose is in the dance. The only thing that we did that is kind of like a literal representation of the movement and not like it positioned the light or it determined the coordinates of the body part or something were these kind of scribbly looking lines. And what I did was for each movement in the library, I did it over and over again, and I thought, which bone in my body has the most interesting journey in the side of this movement? And so I called that the signature bone. And so those little squiggles are, when the sequence is generated, it chooses one of the movements in the sequence, and it draws the path of the signature bone on the image. So those lines, when you see them, this is the journey of one of my bones in one of the movements on the sequence, and that's kind of the only part that is a very one-to-one representation of movement that you see in the visual art output. And I like these bone journey lines, so I wanted to call that out. But no, we're gonna cap these at 7 movements because more than that is like too much, even for pros like them.
All right, so let's refresh. This code base is the official code base of Human Unreadable. So this actually hasn't been run since the sale in 2023. So for the first time, you'll see Human Unreadables that technically don't exist, but here they are.
11
Is that too many?
Yeah, we're capping it at 7. Or we can just choose to do the first 11.
Okay, let me close this.
Sorry,
It's not
first 7.
updating. There we go. It's so big. There we go.
Sequence length 3, that's fair.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, who wants to get this one? Okay, so you want to write down 3, 24, and 25. The first 2 are normal speed, and movement number 25 is double time, facing north, which is this way.
That's north.
And ooh, your emotional climate is your crush responded.
While you're learning those, let's quickly, can I have a volunteer? All you have to do is walk. Okay.
Yes, Justin.
You want to come on stage? Okay. So could you make some space for our
Yes.
guest performer? Okay. So
King is going to learn that sequence, and then we'll run it and get your 2.
So we have a few directions other than just getting the sequence of the moves. We also are generating additional instructions, you can call them, that the choreographer can give to the performer to help make decisions on how that performer should actually perform those moves. So one of the directions is what's the stage orientation? That's north. But the other is an emotional climate. So come right here, please. Justin? Okay. And face actually the mirror. And Ania, could you go here? Okay. So just to start, simply walk from here to that tape. The far one. Okay, great. I'll come back. We'll do it again. You can, I mean, do you? Okay, now walk again, but your crush just responded. Okay, another one.
Okay.
One more.
Okay, your next one is you just heard bad news. Very good.
Okay, one more. To me.
This is really advanced.
On edge. You're on edge. Great.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was excellent.
Okay, so
Thanks, Justin.
that tells you that's the emotional climate, what the emotional climate does. So this particular sequence that King is going to do, he's going to do it not on edge, right? But he's going to do it as if his crush just responded. And so that can take these movements and change what is simply a walk into 3 different experiences or more.
It has the potential for texture, because when we're also staging this into an evening length work, if you have the same movements in different orders for an hour and a half, so as a choreographer, when I'm setting this, we needed ways to inject different kinds of textures and varieties of expressions and moods into the performance. And the emotional climate, as you can just see with the simple act of Justin walking, turns the simple act of walking, which becomes almost like an empty container for any kind of emotional state to manifest physically.
Should we do another?
Let's do another sequence, yeah.
Okay.
You want this one, Sharon?
It's too long, right?
Too long, 7?
Let's do another one.
Okay, it's fine.
Also, I just want to see more output.
12?
Also, I love how it renders in Safari. I prefer it over Chrome.
So irrelevant.
Okay.
Sequence length 3.
Okay.
That's a good one. Yep. Sequence length 3. So movement 17, half time. Number 7, real time. And number 7, double time.
And one more?
Yes.
Okay.
And we have 5 minutes.
That's right.
Sequence length 8. No, these are too long. 14. No. No way.
Look at these artworks there, and never again will we see them.
Sequence length 2. Okay, that's fair enough for this time frame. Okay, Noelle, ready? 22 and 27, both double time. Okay, so while you 3 perfect your sequences. Let's go through our final slide so we can end with watching the sequences.
I love it.
And be on time.
On time. Where did my keynote go? Okay. So
We reviewed all this.
this is what's happening, is a deterministic choreographic algorithm, so that all the outputs are determined by these elements. So the length of the sequence, pauses, tempo, performer orientation, and the underlying motion data. This is our slide to do a tech demo. Because
Disclaimer, tech demo dislike.
it's not really art, we're just actually demonstrating the technology. And while they are rehearsing, we can tell you a little bit about how these images are created in correspondence to the dances that are generated. So I'm going to go back here. So this is this section of the blackboard. Which I've been painting for 4 days on canvas. So you can see that there are many different modules. This is using a program called P5JS. And this code, again, is all uploaded on chain. And what you can see here, if you inspect any Human Unreadable in Safari, you can see these separation of layers. So all of the unique dances, for example, the body parts, which are programmatically drawn, these are not rasterized images. Those body parts are selected by the algorithm itself, the dance sequence, and then they're mapped into our different modules and shaders within P5JS. So for example, there's a library of, I think, 28 silhouettes in Human Unreadable. So every Human Unreadable has one of these silhouettes, except they're scaled in different ways, they're rotated in different ways. So it allows us to be economical, because it was very expensive to upload this data, because it was a lot. So we were on a budget, so we did this aspect of SVG deconstruction, where we basically took vector files and used Python to kind of compress them and turn them into text edit files. So it just was a bunch of numbers. And then when we fed that into our code, what it did is it live draws that onto the canvas. So all these individual layers, I'll explain another one, which is the glass shader. So the clicker.
Dejha, I think we should go through the body before we have to end.
Sure. The body?
Yes.
Oh, like the ending statement?
Yes.
The finale? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think the main goal outside of Human Unreadable and what this method supports is the collectability of choreography. And so it's always our intention to have this method that we see here not just be something that we use, but something that other artists and institutions can use. So the first institution and artist to use this piece was in October, and it was at the Paris Opera House. And so this artist created 100 different works with underlying choreography and expanding the collector base of those interested in choreography. And the day of the Human Unreadable sale, which was May 23rd in 2023, we tweeted this: by the end of the day, hundreds of people will have collected choreography. People who showed up to collect generative art, to collect, visual art, they weren't even expecting to be connected to performance or choreography. And this is something that now has created and generated further interest in performing arts.
And I think it's very interesting, the kind of paradox that we're calling out here of engaging strategically with the market is actually something that can free the art of dance from capitalism's way of making it, like minimizing it into something that is about entertainment. Like, what do the cultural and financial infrastructures and the economics around dance look like if it's treated as an art form and not as a kind of entertainment for the public? What does that unlock for people who want to make movement that is experimental, that is not about entertainment? And another kind of aspect of this is people thinking that technology is always an interference with the body. And we actually have seen with Human Unreadable, we saw a collector, doing his choreographic score in the backyard, sending us videos, having an excuse to dance, that this project oddly got people into their bodies. It got collectors interested in looking at the history of computational choreography, getting interested in dance. And so maybe introducing ownership can also create a new demographic of patrons and people who are interested and invested in the future of performance and in movement, which we have seen. And kids always are the ones that are the most bold in public, and whenever we show this, they don't need any prompt to dance. If there's a hint that they can move, they will move. And I think as adults, kind of a lot of us have lost that, but kids still have that boldness, that curiosity, that connection to their bodies that I think all of us kind of could really benefit from, especially as we get deeper into the digital. So maybe to end, we see the sequences. How are we feeling? Great? Okay, cool. Vamos. 6, 7, 8. Yes, round of applause for our dancers, King, Noelle, and Sharon.
Also, thank you to Art Basel, TAEX, and our wonderful producers, Anna, Emma, and the whole team. Thank you so much.
Thank you.